After the fall of Babylon, the Medo-Persian Empire took control, and Daniel, who had served faithfully under Babylonian rule, found favor in the eyes of the new ruler, Darius. The king recognized Daniel's exceptional qualities and placed him in a position of great responsibility. In the book of Daniel, chapter 6, we read, "Darius decided to appoint 120 satraps to govern the whole kingdom, and over them 3 administrators, of whom Daniel was one, so that the satraps would give an account to them, and the king would suffer no loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the entire kingdom. This promotion, however, sparked envy and resentment among the other officials. They began looking for ways to discredit Daniel, but his integrity was impeccable. The scriptures tell us, "The administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him, because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent." Daniel's reputation for integrity and excellence in work was so solid that his enemies could not find any fault in his conduct or administration. This is a powerful testimony to Daniel's consistency in living out his faith in all aspects of his life, even under the constant scrutiny of hostile eyes. Frustrated in their attempts to find fault with Daniel, the officials came to a conclusion. "We will never find any basis for charges against this Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." This observation reveals both Daniel's impeccable conduct and the depth of his religious devotion, which was known to all. Thus, they devised a cunning plan. Recognizing that they could not attack Daniel for any flaw in his character or work, they decided to create a situation where Daniel's very fidelity to God would become grounds for accusation. The conspirators went to King Darius and proposed, "O King Darius, live forever. All the administrators of the kingdom, the prefects, the satraps, the advisors, and the governors have agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, O king, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." This request was cunning for several reasons. First, it appealed to the king's vanity, suggesting that he should be the sole object of worship for a month. Second, it invoked a peculiarity of Medo-Persian law. Once issued and sealed, a royal decree could not be revoked. Third, the conspirators presented the decree as if it were a unanimous decision of all the kingdom's leaders, concealing their true motivations. King Darius, unaware of the true intention behind this request, signed the decree. He did not realize that he was being manipulated into creating a trap for one of his most trusted advisors. When Daniel learned that the decree had been published, his reaction demonstrated his unwavering faith and commitment to God. The Bible tells us, "When Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before." This passage reveals much about Daniel's character. First, he did not make any attempt to hide his practice of prayer. He could have closed the windows or prayed in secret, but he chose to maintain his usual routine of prayer, demonstrating that his loyalty to God was more important to him than his own safety. Second, the text mentions that Daniel prayed just as he had done before. This indicates that his practice of praying 3 times a day was not a defiant response to the decree, but rather a continuation of his long-standing devotion. Daniel was not engaging in an act of civil disobedience, but simply maintaining his fidelity to God, as he always had. Third, we note that Daniel's windows faced Jerusalem. This reflects the practice described in 1 Kings 8:35-36, where Solomon, at the dedication of the temple, asks God to hear the prayers of the people when they pray toward the temple. Even in exile, Daniel maintained his spiritual connection with Jerusalem and with the temple, the center of worship to God for the Jews. The officials, eager to catch Daniel in the act, went to his house and found him praying and asking God for help. They did not need to wait long or search much, for Daniel made no effort to hide his devotion. Immediately they ran to report to the king. "O king, did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, Anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, O king, will be thrown into the lion's den." The king confirmed that he had, and they proceeded. "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. The Bible tells us that he was deeply troubled. This reaction from the king demonstrates the great respect and affection he had for Daniel. He realized too late that he had been manipulated and that his decree endangered the life of the man he respected and trusted the most. However, the men insisted to the king, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be revoked." Here we see the trap closing in. The king, who had absolute power in almost all matters, found himself powerless before his own decree. The law of the Medes and Persians, which normally served to guarantee stability in the empire, now became an instrument of injustice. Thus, the king was forced to fulfill his own decree. With great regret, he ordered Daniel to be brought and thrown into the lion's den. Before this happened, the king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." These words of the king are significant. They demonstrate that despite his own decree, Darius recognized Daniel's devotion to his God and expressed hope that this God could perform a miracle. A stone was brought and placed over the opening of the den, and the king sealed it with his own ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation could not be changed. This act of sealing the den emphasizes the finality of the sentence under human law, but it also serves to authenticate the miracle that was about to occur. Thus ends the episode of the conspiracy against Daniel. What began as a plan to eliminate a political rival culminated in Daniel being thrown into a seemingly hopeless situation. The den of lions represented a certain death sentence under normal circumstances. The night Daniel was thrown into the den of lions was a crucial moment not only for him, but also for King Darius and for the entire Medo-Persian Empire. This miraculous night serves as a powerful testimony to God's faithfulness and the importance of unwavering faith. After Daniel was thrown into the den, King Darius returned to his palace, but his heart was heavy with worry and remorse. The book of Daniel in chapter 6, verse 18, gives us an intimate glimpse into the king's emotional state that night. The king then went to his palace and spent the night fasting. He did not accept any entertainment that was brought to him, and he could not sleep. This passage reveals the profound impact that Daniel had on the king. Darius, who had been manipulated into signing the decree that condemned Daniel, now found himself tormented by the possibility of having sentenced to death a man he respected and admired. The king's fasting, his refusal of entertainment, and his insomnia demonstrate the depth of his anguish. During this long night, we can imagine the thoughts that passed through the king's mind. He likely reflected on Daniel's integrity, his devotion to his God, and the many times Daniel's wisdom had benefited the kingdom. Perhaps he also thought about the words he had spoken to Daniel before he was thrown into the den, as recorded in verse 16 of the same chapter. "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." Could it be possible that Daniel's God could perform such a miracle? As the king spent the night in anguished vigil, Daniel was having a completely different experience in the den of lions. Although the Bible does not give us specific details about what happened inside the den during that night, the final outcome gives us an idea. Daniel later testified, as we read in verse 22, "My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight." This statement suggests that while the king was tormented by anxiety, Daniel experienced a supernatural peace. Surrounded by beasts that would normally have torn him apart in seconds, Daniel was safe under divine protection. We can imagine that he spent the night in prayer, praising God for his faithfulness and protection. The divine intervention in this situation was truly miraculous. Lions are fierce predators, and a person thrown into a den full of them would normally have no chance of survival. However, God demonstrated his supreme power over creation, even controlling the natural instincts of these beasts to protect his faithful servant. At dawn, the king's anxiety led him to act quickly. Verse 19 tells us, "At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. The king's haste demonstrates his desperate hope that Daniel might have survived. Upon arriving at the den, the king called anxiously for Daniel. His question, recorded in verse 20, reveals both his hope and his doubt. "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel's response must have been one of the greatest joys the king ever experienced. Verses 21 and 22 capture this exciting moment. "O king, live forever," came Daniel's voice from the den. "My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king." The king's joy was immense. The biblical text tells us that he was overjoyed and ordered Daniel to be taken out of the den. When Daniel emerged, everyone could see the miracle with their own eyes. Verse 23 records, "And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God." This moment of rescue was not only a victory for Daniel, but also a powerful demonstration of God's power to all present. King Darius, who the night before was tormented by doubt and remorse, was now an eyewitness to the power of Daniel's God. The impact of this event was immediate and profound. Moved by the demonstration of God's power, King Darius took decisive action. First, he dealt with those who had conspired against Daniel. Verse 24 tells us, "At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones." This severe action demonstrates the seriousness with which the king viewed the conspiracy against Daniel, and serves as a warning to those who seek to harm God's servants. More significantly, King Darius issued a decree that would change the religious landscape of the entire empire. Verses 25 to 27 record this impressive decree, sent to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language throughout the earth. "Peace and prosperity. I issue a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom, people must fear and revere the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed, and his dominion will have no end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." This decree represents a dramatic change. The same king who days earlier had prohibited prayer to any god except himself, now ordered that everyone in his kingdom should fear and revere the God of Daniel. Daniel's testimony and the miracle he experienced not only saved him, but also paved the way for the knowledge of the true God to spread throughout the vast Medo-Persian Empire. The miraculous night in the lion's den had lasting repercussions. The Bible concludes this episode in verse 28 saying, "So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian." Daniel's faithfulness to God, even in the face of death, not only preserved him, but also elevated him to an even greater position of influence. The impact of Daniel's life and his miraculous experiences did not end with his deliverance from the lion's den. His legacy continued to influence not only the Medo-Persian Empire, but also future generations. After King Darius's decree that ordered everyone in his kingdom to fear and revere the God of Daniel, there was a significant change in the religious atmosphere of the empire. The book of Daniel tells us that he prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. This prosperity was not only material, but also spiritual, as the knowledge of the true God spread. Daniel, already advanced in age, continued to serve as a living example of faithfulness and integrity. His life demonstrated that it was possible to remain faithful to God, even in a hostile and pagan environment. This must have been a great source of encouragement for the other Jewish exiles living in the empire. In addition to his role as a royal administrator and counselor, Daniel also received a series of important prophetic visions. These visions, recorded in chapters 7 to 12 of the book of Daniel, encompass a vast panorama of world history, from Daniel's time to the end of days. In the 7th year of King Belshazzar's reign, Daniel had a vision of 4 great beasts, representing 4 kingdoms that would arise on the earth. This vision, parallel to Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue, offered a divine perspective on the flow of human history. Later, in the 3rd year of Belshazzar's reign, Daniel had another vision, this time of a ram and a goat, symbolizing the Medo-Persian and Greek empires. This vision provided surprisingly accurate details about events that would occur centuries later. Perhaps the most famous of Daniel's prophecies is the 70 weeks found in chapter 9. This complex prophecy offers a timeline for the coming of the Messiah and events related to the history of Israel. These prophetic visions established Daniel as one of the major prophets of the Old Testament. His prophecies not only provided hope and guidance for the people of Israel during the exile and in the following centuries, but also became an important foundation for Jewish and Christian eschatology. Daniel's impact extended far beyond his own time. Jesus referred to Daniel as a prophet in his teachings about the end times, giving additional authority to Daniel's words. The book of Revelation in the New Testament makes several allusions to Daniel's visions, establishing a prophetic continuity between the Old and